last up for today, we have Rick Fienberg, who, honestly, without whom we would all be blind. And he's going to talk more about the work he did on Eclipse glasses and how he almost lost his mind.
Thank you, Angela. All right. I suppose I should say right at the outset that we've had very few reports of injured eyes after these eclipses. So I think overall, our safety messaging, and it's not just the AAS or me, it's all of our partners, NASA, the ASP, all the teachers, all the amateurs, was very effective. So just get that out of the way right away. Now, everybody knows that looking at the sun without eye protection outside of totality is dangerous and can injure your eyes. And most people know that ordinary sunglasses are not dark enough to permit safe viewing of the everyday sun. No matter how cool they make you look, they transmit thousands of times too much sunlight. So there's a wide variety of commonly available Eclipse glasses and handheld solar viewers, the most common and the least expensive being the cardboard-framed Eclipse glasses and handheld solar viewers. But how do we know that they're actually safe? Well, the International Organization for Standardization, which goes by its French acronym ISO, published a global standard in the run-up to the 2017 solar eclipse. And it supersedes national, regional, local standards that had been in place for some countries, and it applies worldwide. Almost every country on the planet adheres to ISO. Now, most people aren't going to pay 63 Swiss francs, which is about $70, to get an actual copy of the standard, but thankfully the AAS bought me a copy, and then I described it online on a web page, all right, about the standard, and included the most important part so that people could really understand what it was about. And the most important part are the transmittance limits. How much light can a filter pass, not just visible light, but also infrared and ultraviolet, and still be safe, allowing us to see the sun comfortably without causing retinal damage. And these transmittance requirements are very, very low limits. Now, you may wonder why a standard like this would include a minimum transmittance, which is the second line of the data table. And it's because ISO standards are not just for safety, they're also for suitability to purpose. And of course, a solar filter that's so dark you can't get a good image of the sun is not going to be very useful, and it might even cause people to toss it aside and try to look without protection, as we know at least some people have done. Okay, now we naively said that, that our main message about Eclipse glasses was that if your Eclipse glasses were made by a manufacturer whose products met the standard, you were okay. But we were naive because we didn't really think about the fact that most people don't buy their Eclipse glasses directly from a manufacturer, right? Most commonly, they buy from a dealer, some kind of retailer, a store, or an online site. Now, it turns out that there's often intermediaries even between the manufacturers and the dealers, right? You might have a wholesaler or a professional buyer. And even worse, there's often intermediaries between the retailers and the observers, right? Maybe a friend or a parent bought your glasses. So it's very hard to trace a pair of Eclipse glasses back to its manufacturer. Now, some of them, the standard says that the manufacturer should be listed on the glasses, but they don't define the manufacturer. And so it's not always the factory that's listed there. Sometimes it's a distributor, sometimes it's a retailer. So you never, unless it's the actual manufacturer, you can't trace it. Now, this isn't even a complete list of all the ways people get their hands on Eclipse glasses. So in order to help people figure out where they could buy safe glasses, I created this list of suppliers of safe solar viewers and filters and posted it on our website. And this page was very widely promoted by NASA and our other partners and through the media, and was the single highest visited web page that the AAS had ever published across its entire spectrum of websites. I also created a page that told suppliers how to get onto our list. And at this point, it's important for me to now tell you how I vetted the glasses, okay? The key thing was I needed to identify the manufacturer and to confirm that their viewers met the ISO standard. For the manufacturers themselves, it's pretty easy. I would just ask for evidence that their products had been tested and shown to meet the standard. For everyone else, I'd ask for the name of their manufacturer or their distributor, and then contact that manufacturer or distributor and confirm that they were supplying that company. So I checked from both sides. So here's what I mean by evidence of compliance with ISO 12312-2, a number I can rattle off in my sleep. First thing is I need a laboratory test report showing conformity with the standard, okay, that it meets those requirements. But this test report has to come from a laboratory that's properly accredited, and that means accredited by a recognized authority, all right? And then the laboratory must not just be accredited, but it needs to be accredited specifically to test for compliance with this particular standard. And you can tell because every test lab has something called the accreditation scope and certificate. And you can look on the accreditation scope and certificate to see if that standard is listed. Keep in mind that, you know, just because a lab is accredited to test for, say, child car seats, it doesn't mean that they have the expertise and the equipment and the knowledge of the proper procedures to test for compliance with, with transmittance and other properties of a solar filter. All right, so here's a sample of a good test report. Okay, ICS Labs is in Ohio. I've redacted the name of the seller because just for privacy purposes. And I checked, here's how I vetted. I get the test report. I would confirm that the lab is properly accredited or accredited to test for compliance with ISO. And I checked that the accrediting organization is a signatory of this, this thing that the acronym that I spelled out for you on an earlier slide. This one actually is the A2LA, another acronym, is the American Association for Laboratory Accreditation. But anyway, I checked to see that they were properly a signatory of that organization, and I also here highlight that they published some nice test results, okay? And it says pass, 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 or comply, comply, comply. Now, it's not good enough just to have those X's in that column. I want to see the data, and a proper lab will show you the data. Okay, you don't need to be able to read the numbers. I just want you to know that they provide the actual transmittances that they measure, and they have the pass again because they are within the standards limits. They also even indicate the uniformity of transmittance, which is another part of the standard. And elsewhere in this report, though I'm not showing it to you, they publish their uncertainties of measurement. So this is legitimate scientific engineering data, all right? Now here's an example of a test report that's not legit, all right? This ACT testing technology, which is in China, could not find any evidence in all the databases I searched that they are accredited by a signatory of this ILAC MLA. They don't even indicate which organization accredits them. Now look, if you look in that right-hand column, it's PPPPP all the way down, all right? And there's no quantitative results, and the P even includes passing subheads, okay? How do you pass section 4? It's a subhead, okay? The specifications are in 4.1.1, which also has a P. They awkwardly insert a section 4.4. There is no section 4.4, and if you could read that table, you would see that that's just a photocopy, basically, of the requirements in the ISO standard, all right? So, all right, so that's how I vetted things, looking at those test reports and doing all that communication. Originally, my list of sellers, which eventually ran to hundreds, was alphabetized to make it easy to find them. But then I started getting requests from companies to change their name, stick a number in front of their name so that they would rise to the top. Or I would get companies that would be called Eclipse, and things like that. So here's a couple of them that show up here. NovaLens used to be NovaLens. Now it's one NovaLens, okay? All right. So obviously they're trying to game the system. My response, randomize the list. So I started randomizing the list using an Excel spreadsheet, And once a week for several months leading up to April 8th, I would randomize the list again. This caused a lot of people to think they were no longer on the list, right? And so then I started getting calls saying, how come I'm not on the list anymore? And I said, just do a little search on the page. You'll find yourself. You're there. Oh, eventually I started getting offers of money to move people up on the list. And I, of course, refused those. All right, sorry. Oh, Amazon and eBay. All I'll say about them is they were throwing legitimate sellers off their platform for reasons I couldn't figure, and they were letting sellers that had not been properly vetted stay on the list. They never contacted me, but I heard from the sellers that Amazon told them they were using our list as a reference. So why were they throwing people off their platform who were on our list? It was pretty maddening. Well, despite all the craziness, we actually didn't get any reports, and I didn't see any evidence from any reports, from any test reports, that any of the glasses that were coming into North America were not safe. So we decided to offer some reassurance to the public. Okay? We offered some warnings that some glasses might or might not be coming from legitimate sellers, but we didn't see any that were actually unsafe. The very next day after we published this, I got my first report of genuinely unsafe glasses. I got a sample of them. Unbelievable. You could just look through them and see stuff, but these were being sold to people as Eclipse glasses. So now we had to issue a second press release saying, oops, sorry about that. Actually, there are some unsafe glasses out there, and we gave people suggestions for how they could tell that glasses were unsafe. You cannot tell just by looking at them or looking through them that they are safe, but you can tell if they're not, and we told people how to do that. I should say, this is just really interesting, that the vendor that I discovered was selling fake stuff used to be, they were on our list. Now, how could that be? Well, I got in touch with the factory, which I'd previously traced. They told me that these guys weren't buying from them anymore, but they were still printing their name on it, okay? So it was just, that's fraud, pure and simple, okay? All right, so this is me. This is me. My workload became intolerable, okay? I was spending all my waking hours fielding emails and phone calls from panicked sellers as we got closer to the eclipse and more of them discovered that there was this list that they were supposed to be on. It was getting really crazy. Some people called me with sob stories. I just spent $40,000 on Eclipse glasses. I thought they were fine, but I bought them from China, and I don't see I don't see their factory listed. And I said, well, they're not listed because we've never seen any evidence that they're selling legitimate stuff. You can pay to get the glasses tested yourself if you want, and some people did, and they generally came back fine. But they weren't going to go on our list without that evidence. Okay. So I'm running out of time, so I'm not going to say much more about this. I'm just going to go straight to the only two things I could come up with as the solutions here. The first one is, for the future Solar Eclipse Task Force, the one that I thankfully will not be on, just don't do anything. Let the marketplace do its thing, okay? Not necessarily a great solution, but I wouldn't wish what I went through for the last decade on anybody, all right? I'm not whining about it. I'm just saying that I thought I was doing a favor, to the community, but it was really grueling and at times quite, painful. I even was getting phone calls from dealers and even factories while I was on my cruise ship for the April 8th eclipse. Okay, that's how bad it got. So one thing is just don't do anything. It's like whack-a-mole. No matter how many times you fix a problem, another one pops right up. But on a more constructive note, I actually think that the onus should be on the manufacturers, okay? The manufacturers are a relatively small group, okay? There's only I've only so far identified about 20 factories that are producing these things. And I've vetted 15 of them, or 17 of them, and the other 3 didn't even want to be on the list anyway. So it didn't matter. But it's a small number. Now, I asked some of the manufacturers after the annular eclipse, when I realized things were only going to get worse for April, would you please create your own list? And they said, we can't. We're too busy. We're already over, we're producing glasses 3 shifts. We can't do it. Maybe if we asked them earlier, Kate, maybe you can plant this seed in Australia since you still have a few years before your next eclipse. Maybe we can get manufacturers to agree to maintain lists of their own distributors, resellers, et cetera. But even then, it's as I said, sometimes people start buying from a different factory. It's really hard to police this. Even if we did list the factories, or even if we put the onus on the factories, we'd still need to vet the factories, right, to have a list, but it would be a nice short list. And as long as each of those factories had a link to their list of where you can buy their glasses, it wouldn't be so bad. The real headache is just trying to vet all of those intermediaries between the manufacturer and the end user. So I intend to write an article about this whole process and this whole experience with lots of examples, images of the good, the bad, and the ugly for the bulletin, which you've been hearing about several times. I'll probably get this into the fall issue. And that is my story. Not too bad, I guess. All right.
Questions for Rick?
First is a statement on behalf of all of us. Thank you. We know that was an arduous effort and highly important. One of the things I noticed difference between 2017 and 2024 was towards the end of 2024, rather than being a shortage, there was a glut of glasses. I was at several events on Eclipse weekend in Northeast Ohio. You couldn't give them away. There was people competing to take our glasses, and all that way. Any data or any feedback from anyone that way, or any lessons learned to pass along? Because big difference. What do you put in a report? You can never have enough glasses versus you can have too many glasses, and how to get a sweet spot.
Right. Well, in 2017, there were two main manufacturers in the U.S., and we knew of none in China. There were a couple in Germany. And nobody knew what the demand would be. And something of the order of like 20 million glasses were distributed in the U.S. But for 2023 and 2024, there were now more than half a dozen U.S. manufacturers, because a lot of people got into it after 2017. They said, hey, here's an opportunity to make some money. And the Chinese had started flooding the market right at the end of 2017, or the preparation for the 2017 eclipse. So now, as you saw, I've found at least 17 factories. There's more like 20. So there was a vast increase in the capability. And I spoke just to the two main American manufacturers, and they more than doubled their production for this eclipse. So there were a lot more eclipse glasses in circulation, probably something of order 100 million is my guess. 100 million. That's like, 1 in every 3 people in the country could get a pair without difficulty.
Very quick observation. I think this is generalizable. There was only one Rick Fienberg. And that happens often, right? That there's only one person who will step up to do something. Is there something that the AAS can do in 20 years or slightly under to encourage the spread, the distribution maybe of some of this work? And I think this applies to all kinds of efforts. So your thoughts?
Yeah, well, I would just say maybe, I don't have a good answer for that. And it's also very hard to predict where you're going to be in 20 years. Maybe AI can do it, like I said, I wouldn't want to hire a bunch of people to do this. It's maddening. It's maddening. It's not just difficult or challenging or time-consuming. It's maddening because, especially when you get people starting to, offer you bribes. It's just, don't want to deal with this. I didn't get a PhD for this. Okay.
I agree about putting the responsibility onto the manufacturers. I actually do think that's the way to go. I haven't told you this, but I had 2 approaches from Chinese manufacturers wanting me to be an official distributor. The first one I was kind of curious about, and then I sent some reply back, and then they were really apologetic. Then they said, no, don't worry about it. I think because I told them some of what I was doing, and I think that was a bit suspicious. The second one I just didn't respond to at all. But I never told you about that, so...
No.
And I wonder if other people are actually getting approached from the manufacturers in China as a way of getting them to be distributed across.
Well, this
the
is an
US.
interesting, I'm actually glad you raised this point, because this is another one of the reasons that the manufacturers told me they didn't want to do anything. It didn't make sense to me, really, because manufacturer A said, well, I don't want to put my list of dealers on your website because then manufacturers B, C, and D are going to try to poach them from me. But that didn't really wash with me because I had everybody on the list. So nobody knew who was supplied by whom, but they knew who all the other dealers were. So I suspect that maybe you were approached because you were already on my list. I don't know, but it could be. It could be.
This is something, thankfully, don't have to worry about for 20 years, right? But TikTok. So I'm on TikTok. I do sun content on TikTok.
Can you
Eclipse
pull that a
content.
little closer?
Yeah, so I do like sun and Eclipse stuff on TikTok.
Yeah.
But TikTok recently, in the last couple of years, introduced TikTok Shop, which they're trying to compete with sort of eBay, Amazon. And I was flooded with videos of just normal people, influencers, selling Eclipse glasses on TikTok.
Yeah.
And, I have no idea where they came from, manufacturers.
Yeah.
Some people threw out words of, ISO approved and all this, but
Right.
just I dread to think where a lot of those came from.
Yeah, I know. There's so many more things I could say. I mean, a lot of glasses would say NASA approved. NASA doesn't approve glasses. What happened was NASA pointed to our list, and then people assumed that meant that they approved of the glasses, that they were just referring people to our list. There's just so many ways that this is almost impossible. I mean, just pick any product. There was an article in the Washington Post a few months ago that I said, I recognize this. You can buy fake eye drops, and they are packaged by Chinese manufacturers with exactly the same packaging as the legitimate ones that you might find at your local drugstore. And people are getting eye injuries from these things because the chemicals, who knows what the chemicals are. So the marketplace is out of control. I tried to keep up with it, but it's just I don't think one person or an army of 20 people or whatever it is can deal with this, because the proliferation of online sellers and all these other ways that people are getting their money taken away from them, it just makes it really, really hard to police anything like this. So I suppose it'd be great if the health industry somehow could get involved. You could get regulation, from the medical community or something. But even that's almost a losing battle, because there's still huge numbers of eye doctors out there telling people you should never look at the sun, or if you do look at the sun, keep those Eclipse glasses on during totality. So, I just don't know what to do. I'm just glad I'm done with this one.
Let's thank you again.
All right, thank you.
So thank you, Rory. That concludes our program for today. But I just want to encourage everybody to, if you haven't already done it, be thinking about what you would publish so that these lessons that we've learned are out there through the bulletin of the AAS. And I look forward to seeing what you all have to say. In the meantime, go and enjoy the rest of the meeting.